edit that out. Okay, gang, how we doing? John for the Good Dog. You guys all good out there? Lots of awesome stuff to rap about with you guys today. I've moved my table back, so you're gonna see me hold this. I'm not going to like have a table to place it on. I do have my trusty coffee and my water here, so I'm all geared up. Laura is at her lair in North Hollywood, so we will be doing, once again, a long distance little kind of co-communication. Hopefully you guys can bear with us. She's not here to yell at me about the water, my slurping, so that's always a positive. Anyway, so let's rap about a few things. Okay, what's cooking in the Good Dog world? So heading out to NOLA for the audiobook. This is big news, right? So the audiobook, if anybody's been following me on Instagram stories, I've been rapping about it a little bit, talking, teasing, just kind of sharing kind of what we're shooting for, what we're looking for, what we're going to be hopefully kind of getting into, which is really looking to make this something special, something different than just the physical book or the digital book. We're really looking to make it something that I'm going to add to. I'm going to kind of like, as I'm going through the book, of course I'm going to read all the content. I'm going to go through all of it. We're going to jam through and we're going to like enjoy that. I'm going to read it like a very nice bedtime story to you guys. But I'm also going to dive into some of the topics and concepts as I go through it, and maybe even relay some of the personal stories that brought that on, what dog we might have been training, what we were going through, what caused the thought process, how the idea came to pass. Who knows? We're going to keep it wide open. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. I'm going to fly down to New Orleans to do it. There's a guy named Michael who's super bad ass, and he's the guy who did our DVD overdubs for us, or our voiceovers, and he's so much fun and so cool and brings out the best in me for sure. So it'll just be me solo. Laura won't be traveling down there, so you'll just get me. You'll be stuck with me, but we're gonna have a blast with it. And I'm telling you guys, this audiobook, there's only really one that I've seen that I like that's similar, and that's Gary Vaynerchuk's book, or his books. He typically records his audiobooks and then just riffs and has a good time with it, and it's very conversational. Anything that he feels like will add value or make the book, the audio, more special or unique than the actual physical or the digital, he jumps into. I really enjoy that. It feels very personal, feels very just special and cool, and so I really want to do the same thing for you guys, and I think it'll be fun for you guys to hear some of the backstories and some of the stuff like that. So who knows what we're going to get into. Michael in New Orleans is talking about getting comfortable with beers and things like that, so hopefully everything will stay on the rails and we'll be okay. What else we got going on? The digital book itself should be out any day. We've had like some technical stuff. Our main man Brian, who is the genius that keeps the wheels on this train or car or whatever the hell the saying is, he's the guy. Whenever our websites get tweaked or updated and new things go on, or the DVDs get posted up to be purchased, or any of the processing or any of that stuff, he's the guy that makes all that stuff happen. Me and Laura just kind of throw our hands up and like, you know, send out an SOS, Brian, help! And he always does. He always comes through, and he's such a badass. So, but he's run into some formatting issues and having to update some part of the site, which is too complicated for me to even like, you know, try and share with you now. But so he's updating it, and he was hoping to have it done last Thursday, but we're hoping any day now that we'll get the green light. And then for all of you folks that have been looking for digital, that prefer to read on a digital device rather than an actual book, be able to take it with you on a flight or travel or anything, or on your phone, something like that. You newfangled folks that don't like that stinky, like moldy paper stuff and having to carry a big book around, will be able to do it on the digital, and that should be very cool. And plus, you'll save on shipping. So those are both really really exciting things with the book stuff. Now, I want to talk also about, I've been doing some videos and some posts. Even on Q&A, you've heard me, we talk a lot about how to problem solve. So less about and we do talk about obedience stuff, and today I put up a 2-part video on obedience and the limitations with it, because I see it so often. I see a lot of training companies pushing obedience work, and then I see a lot of dogs coming to us after them. It's just a very cool piece of the puzzle, but it's just a piece of the puzzle. So that's why you always hear me harping on and on about it, because I really feel like people are not getting the full story. And so people are going out with good intentions to get their dogs trained, thinking that obedience work will get their dog from here to here. But if their dogs have serious behavior issues, that ain't gonna happen. So I've been talking a lot about that, but my real point is that whether it's Q&A or that, or those kind of videos or anything else, you probably hear me talking a lot about corrections, right? You hear me talking about even high-level corrections. I just did a thing, I'm pointing at Facebook over here, where I said, what's your biggest training issue, your biggest block, your biggest problem? And I got almost 200 questions between both my Facebook pages and Instagram. And almost without exception, people are struggling with behavior issues that might be marginally helped by obedience work, but they're really dealing with serious behavior issues, whether it's massive dog reactivity on walks, whether it's separation anxiety, whether it's dog-to-dog aggression, whether it's human aggression, whether it's resource guarding, whether it's whatever it is. We're seeing far more serious stuff. I mean, like I said, about 200 questions worth of serious stuff coming down the pike, stuff that obedience work is not going to solve. And so when you hear me talk about corrections, I want to make sure it's clear that it doesn't sound like that's our only, we're a one-trick pony and that's all we do is correct dogs, because it's the furthest thing from the truth. It's a tiny portion of what we do, but it's an essential portion. And without owners understanding this part, because it's the part trainers don't want to talk about, and so you don't hear about it very much. It's the marketing wise, it's the unsavory portion of training. It's the part that's harder for owners. It's the part that doesn't look as good on video. So it ends up getting kind of pushed to the side. But the reality is, there's a reason I'm getting 200 questions about how do I fix, from some simple challenges to some really complex challenges, and most of them come down to corrections, consequences, punishment for really negative choices, and attaching those consequences or punishment to those choices to where those choices or those behaviors diminish and fade away. And that's the thing I really feel is missing. So I wanted to share that with you. So if you hear me talking a lot about corrections, or even high-level corrections, turning up, the e-collar, turning it up to 100 and pressing and holding for a couple seconds. Those aren't things that we just say willy-nilly. They're not things that we enjoy. They're not parts of the training that we're like, yeah, that's the great. It's the crappy part. It's not the part that's fun. It's not the part where you get to have a blast with the dog and run around. But it's I'm sure it's the same with a doctor. Cutting somebody open to do open heart surgery probably isn't the fun part, but seeing that person heal and get back to a healthy life and be able to get back on their feet and live a happy, healthy life, that is the reward. That is the good stuff. So being willing to work through the stuff that's less appetizing, the unsavory, the harder, the more difficult stuff in order to get dogs to the right space is a real necessity if you're dealing with behavior problems, behavior modification needs, things like that. So if you've got stuff that's serious going on and you have a trainer that's not having any conversations with you about correcting, sharing consequences, punishing those behaviors to diminish or reduce or completely eradicate them, you need to look for another trainer, because just training behaviors, just training a dog how to do sit, stay, recall, up, down, ring a bell, things like that, that is not going to solve the problems of major issues. So are we able to rectify serious reactivity issues? Yeah, most of the time we are. Are we able to help dogs with dog-to-dog aggression? Oftentimes we are. Some really incredibly serious cases, sometimes we hit like some pretty serious limitations. Truth be told, right? Human aggression, 9 times out of 10 we can get those dogs into a great space. Separation anxiety, same thing. But all of these situations require some kind of an aversive, some kind of something that makes that choice, even if it's coming from a fearful place, makes that choice uncomfortable, more uncomfortable than doing it, more uncomfortable than the release of channeling that stuff out, more uncomfortable than just fulfilling that habit. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. And when you're able to do that, make it uncomfortable enough to where a behavior changes, a choice changes, an attitude changes, and then you add obedience work into it, then you've really got a heady stew. Did I really say heady stew? A heady brew. Who knows what the hell I'm saying? But you really have a strong combination of two things that can both work in tandem and make some amazing stuff happen. So I just wanted to clarify and let you guys know, if you hear me talking a lot about corrections, consequences, punishment, it's not because we're just hard asses, and it's not because that's all we do. It's because we understand what it takes to help a dog break through and get to the other side. And that's why you see dogs in so many of our videos going from bad to incredibly changed, transformed dogs, because we're not just training obedience commands. We're actually helping a dog change its decision-making process, and then layering over that a lot of obedience stuff to where that helps leverage everything, and everything comes together and makes a nice little mishmash, if you will. So anyways, I wanted to clarify that. Other than that, it's time to rock and roll and get into the show. I hope you guys are digging the lights. I'm kind of digging the light setup. This is going through the iPhone, so got the mic on. Laura said it wasn't quite super loud, so I moved it up a little bit. Hopefully you can hear better. But I think this looks pretty good for a little ghetto rig that I've got going on. So, anyways. Hey everybody, it's Sean from The Good Dog, and this is The Good Dog's Q&A Saturday, episode number 135. And I always go backwards, 135. And that's an old tradition, just because I've messed it up so many times going backwards that now I will just forever do it both ways, and I cover my bases and cover my ass, and then I don't get into trouble. Cool. And all this stuff that you can't see, which is really just basically like Malu and Manny and Belle like sleeping and snoring away, make up The Good Dog's Q&A Saturday. And I just said that, so it's really just redundant. Episode 135. One of these days, I'll figure out how to do the intro exactly right, and you guys will all be blown away. But until then, we'll have fun with it. All right, so let's jump into question number 1.
Okay, real quick. I have other clips that are just about to come up where I'm about to start the questions, but I just want to throw in there, I'm editing this right now, and Sean keeps saying stuff like, I don't want to get in trouble, I don't want to get yelled at. Guys, I'm not yelling at anyone. The only time I've ever been upset with Sean for reals is when he drops my $1,000 mic. That's it. That's the only time. But other than that, it's all fun and games. Just want to throw that in there because I keep being thrown under the bus and I can't defend myself. Okay. Hey guys. Okay, so thanks for that intro, Sean. I would typically do an intro, but I don't really have anything new to share, except that I see now that my makeup is smudged. The best thing is that the baby is asleep. So while he sleeps, I'm going to read and answer these questions. So we have question number 1 comes from Barb. Barb says, I have a 6-year-old alpha GSD and 4-year-old boxer, both males, both neutered. The boxer grew up with the GSD. When the boxer was about 2, out of nowhere, he and the GSD started fighting to the death. Since then, they can't be in the same room. Oh, and they play musical kennels. My left arm is deformed from stitches after breaking up 2 terrible fights. Oh my gosh. We've tried muzzles, discipline. I had a trainer come to our house, all to no avail. All they have to do is look at each other. Any suggestions? Thanks, Barb. Oh my gosh, this is a really, really tough one. I really feel for you, Barb. Hopefully, I know Sean can shed some light on this situation.
Okay. Thank you, Laura Morgan, for the question see no cookies, no snacks, no treats, I'm on the straight and narrow. Unless you're watching Instagram stories and saw what I had for lunch. But if you didn't, I'm on the straight and narrow. Okay, so we got Barb. I'm gonna read this from the computer. Just for me, just a quick little review, and go. Okay, so Barb's basically got a 6-year-old German Shepherd and a 4-year-old Boxer, and they started fighting when the Boxer turned 2 years old. This is an incredibly common situation. 2 years old seems to be the magic number when most dogs are, if they're going to get into a troubled situation, that's typically when we're going to see that stuff go down. Dogs that were dog park dogs and frolicked with other dogs happily and never had any issues suddenly start going after dogs. Dogs that were more comfortable around human beings can sometimes start to get into a more nervous, unsure, insecure space. They were probably like that at some point earlier to a lesser degree, but then typically we see it manifest as the dog matures. Territorial stuff gets more enhanced. The front door, people coming in, all that stuff, right? It just, everything gets lifted up and elevated. Now, if you've got that stuff going on and you've got an additional dog in the house, and she says she's got an alpha GSD, which, you know, I'm not there, so I don't know what it looks like, but if she's got a GSD that's basically like thinking it rules the roost, which Barb, no, none of your dogs should be ruling the roost. But if your dog does think it's ruling the roost, and then all of a sudden this Boxer shows up and then hits 2 and starts feeling its oats and feeling kind of like, who do you think you are? And if no one is intervening and advocating or correcting crappy choices, then you're off to the races. You're off to the races with 2 dogs that are starting to build a grudge with each other. You only need a couple fights to build a grudge, and I've written about the grudge many times. I think people forget that dogs can develop grudges just like human beings can, and I'm certain from what you share in your post or your comment that your dogs have developed a serious grudge from what you say. They look at each other and it's on. So at that point, you're at the kind of worst case scenario as far as dog-to-dog aggression inside your home. And to be honest, there's not always a great answer for that. Oftentimes there's no answer for that. It depends on the dogs, it depends on the home, depends on the owner, depends what you guys can bring to the table. Could your dogs come live here, and could we keep them in a space where they might not fight? Maybe. With like incredible amounts of structure, high levels of accountability, high levels of leadership, high levels of rules, and the dogs actually believing and buying into us 1,000,000%, maybe. For you, it's going to be a very, very challenging situation. They already have this environment that they live in has already become this place where this goes down. So it's not only a grudge going on, but the associations around you, around your home environment, they all contribute to feeling like this is what we do here around these people. You said, if I'm not mistaken, stitches, if I'm not mistaken. My arm is deformed from stitches after breaking up 2 terrible fights. So Barb, I've got two recommendations for you. One is that you get serious professional help, and I don't mean mental, serious professional help dog training wise. You bring in somebody that absolutely knows dog aggression and handles aggression issues backwards and forwards and has a ton of proof and is also really realistic with you and is not going to blow smoke up your behind and say like, everything's going to be fine, let me just get your $5,000 or whatever it's going to be. Make sure that whoever you're looking at, if you decide to go that route, has a ton of proof, ton of integrity, ton of character, and go from there. If that's not a possibility, if it's financially not feasible, if it doesn't lifestyle-wise make sense to you, you don't want to bring a trainer in, you don't feel like, you know, I think you already said you've had a trainer in. Hang on. Being the same room, my left arm, so I've tried muzzles. This one, yeah, had a trainer come to the house. You got muzzles going on, so you've done a bunch of that stuff. Whether that trainer was really qualified to handle like a serious aggression, dog to dog fighting situation, I can't tell you. But here would be my recommendation, honestly, from a safety standpoint. You're talking about two big dogs. You're talking about the harm that they could do to themselves is extreme. The harm they've already done to you is extreme. Anybody getting in the middle of that is going to get themselves highly, highly damaged. And I don't want that for either of you. That being the dogs or you, or if there's anybody else in your family that might get hurt. So, for one thing, if the dogs do fight, don't jump in and put your hands in there and grab a slip lead, something, get it around the dog's neck, and then cut the dog's air off so you can actually get the dog to relax and pull off. But don't put your hands in there. Don't do anything like that. You can grab collars. You can twist collars like this to cut the air supply off if the collar works, if the collar will hold, if it's not too thick. You can grab the back legs and pull the dogs away, see if the wheelbarrow works, and twist them off at an angle, things like that. You can throw a bucket of water. I mean, there's a million different things you can try, but don't stick your hands in there, please, 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 please. So if you really feel like you're at the end of your rope, you've tried everything, your crate, rotate, muzzles on, you've had a trainer there, and you're not feeling like there's any hope in that direction, then I would rehome one of your dogs. I would find a great home, and that can be challenging, especially with dogs that have had issues with other dogs. So most likely that dog that you rehomed would have to be a single dog, single only dog. So I wish I had better news for you, but fighting dogs that have been allowed to fight for a decent amount of time is one of the most incredibly difficult things to sort out. You're not dealing with let me just work on your trigger. You're working on multiple tension and anxiety and association and grudge, and you're probably also dealing with hierarchy up for grabs, position up for grabs, could be, relationship stuff up for grabs with you. So many different factors can be at play here. And so if you're going to have dogs like this that are both kind of like strong alpha dogs, for lack of a better term, I don't typically use that word, but if you're going to have what you're calling alpha dogs, you've got to be the alpha dog. It's the only way it ever works. The only way that works is that you are more powerful emotionally and the way that you construct your interactions with your dogs than your dogs are. It's the only way to inhibit that. And then of course, all the other stuff I talked about at the top of this, which is consequences, punishment, and learning how to do that kind of stuff with dogs that are in a serious state. It ain't easy. It's even with the best person helping you, you might not get anywhere. So I wish I had better news for you, but you really are dealing with a challenging situation. So keep us posted. Let us know how it goes, okay? Thanks.
Okay, awesome. So this next question is mine. Question number 2 comes from Tara. Tara says, I have a 3-year-old GSD and a 16-week-old GSD lab. They get along great and love to play. However, once they are playing, it's hard to get them to stop. I'm also not sure how rough to allow them to play. I haven't had many dogs. They chase and play tug, but they also like to pin each other down. They reciprocate the play, so it doesn't look like anyone's bullying the other, but I just don't know what I should accept as okay. Once they're playing, their recall is horrible, and neither is e-collar trained yet. The GSD will have an e-collar training in July, which will help, but I'm not sure what to do until then. I'm also wondering when I can e-collar train the puppy. Should I set a time limit and then just put them in place afterwards? If so, how much time can they play and how many times per day? Thanks, I just ordered the book and I can't wait to read it. Awesome. Okay, Tara, so this is a really good question, especially coming off of Barb's question, which is such a tough one. Your situation, fortunately, is a lot nicer in terms of your dogs can't stop getting along. You have them just playing and playing and playing. So especially those that GSD fun, rough play stuff has got to be hard if you haven't had a lot of dogs to figure out are they playing or is it too much? Is it over the top? Really, you nailed it when you said there's reciprocation. So the biggest thing we look for really is just reciprocal play. So you can picture like one dog going after, running away, the other one going after. I forget who said this, but someone said that animals, when they play, it's a lot of contest. It's not like competition or rough, it's contest. So it's like, I'll get you, I'll pin you down, but then I'm gonna run away and let you chase me. So there's a lot of like fun in it. So I would say definitely check for that reciprocity between them. What's hard is that you'll hear that kind of shepherdy like growling and all that stuff, and it can sound really bad. But just remember that as long as it's reciprocal and as long as everyone seems like they're having fun and no one seems stressed, that sound can be as loud and crazy as possible, and it just doesn't, it's all fun. Cujo and Belle are best friends ever in the world. They love each other so much and they play together, but when they play, it sounds like they're both dying. Well, I think Belle sounds worse. Belle's just growling and all over the place, and it's really like looks really sharp, but they're both having a ton of fun, and that's how we know that it's cool. Now, in terms of like time limit, I would just say, if the puppy is in training, if you're trying to get them both in training, then you don't want to just make all day, every day, just like fun, crazy time, right? You want to make it like, okay, so we have fun and we play for like, a half hour, and then we do half hour of place command, or then we cool off in the crates and kind of hang out, or you're both in place, across a room from each other, which is probably a challenge because they love to be around each other. Just play it by ear. I mean, if there's a time where the whole family's out on the deck or something, I don't know if you have a deck, but I'm picturing this deck. You're out on the deck barbecuing and the dogs are playing for an hour or so. It's not something you have to like stop completely and be like, all right, let's, fix this. But if you're kind of like spacing out play throughout the day, just make it like, 30 minutes tops, and then just have them hang. Okay, what else? And GSD will have e-collar training in July. Okay, cool. So yeah, in July, that's not very far away. When your GSD has that e-collar training, you can start having them play, like I said, 30 minutes into it, 20 minutes into it, call the GSD over. And what you said about the recalls, that's really, really common. The dogs kind of lose all sense of like, oh, I'm trained, because they know they're not really doing anything wrong. They're just playing, and they're also super distracted. So what will be cool is a nice, game of recalling out of that. Now, the one thing you want to be careful of is if the dogs are totally engaged and rolling and fake biting and stuff, you don't want to do any correcting during that time, because you don't want the GSD to think that the young puppy that the GSD lab had like caused, the correction sensation or anything like that. So wait till they're like, maybe if they're in a chase or running or something like that and they're far from each other, then you can call the GSD out once the training's on board. Not too early in the training. Wait till the e-collar training's really good, and that you'll have to determine with your trainer. As for the puppy on e-collar, if it's like a big sturdy dog, you can start e-collar around 4.5, 5 months, just really low level stuff. The thing that you definitely want to make sure with that is that you have a ton of foundation before that. So you have a ton of, you could do treats, to slip lead, to prong collar, how old is he? 16 weeks. So yeah, you're close. I mean, you could start around the same time as your GSD is getting e-collar training. That would be great. They could both be learning at the same time. And just remember, when they're playing and fighting, you don't correct, you don't do any of that, because you don't want any misconstruing that e-collar sensations coming from the other dog or anything weird. So just have them like when they're separated, or if they're running, then you can practice the recalls. And again, that's after they know everything really well. So how much time can they play? Yeah, just exactly like you said, set a time limit, put them in place afterward. 20, 30 minutes is awesome, and just have fun.
Okay, so nice work, Laura, with the rough play. I mean, that's always one that seems to stymie a lot of folks. What is and what isn't okay, and how far do you let it go, and when do you say when, and how do you say when, and all that good stuff. People keep asking us. I mean, we've shared a couple reciprocal play videos, but we really need to get more of those on board so people can see kind of where we draw the lines and what we think is okay. Anyways, okay, so let's get on to question number 3.
Okay, awesome. We have question number 3. Question number 3 comes from Amy. Amy says, "Hey Sean, I wanted to say thank you. I've learned so much from your videos, and we also struggle with the visitor issues. Our GSD is very reactive when people come to our house. What is the best way to introduce someone new? Currently, we have him on leash at a distance. We put him in a sit or a downstay, and if he barks or growls, we give a correction and tell him no. He settles down, but as soon as they stand up or move, he is back to barking. He also gets really worked up if the visitor pets our other dog. We tried putting him in climb on his place training bed, and he'll stay there but starts barking and gets worked up because he can't see what's going on. I would love to see him be more comfortable in his own home when people come over, and for him to have the joy of meeting new people."
All right, so Amy with the human reactive GSD. So, I've got my notes here and I've got my notes over here, or Amy's comment and or question, I should say. And so Amy's comment is actually really apropos because I always want to say it's a really great question that has to do a lot with what I opened the show with and what I did, what I shared as far as the videos about obedience versus mindset and sharing consequences and corrections and punishment and things like that. So basically, Amy's been sharing, strategies. She's been trying to work on cultivating strategies to deal with her human reactive GSD, right? And it's super, this is such common GSD behavior. I mean, they've got this territorial stuff built into them, and if you don't really run that show, they're just gonna that DNA is just gonna come to the fore, and they're just gonna do their thing. So anyways, let me dive in. So Amy, you need more than commands in order to make this work for your dog. In order for your dog to be successful, right? It goes back to the top of the show. It goes back to everything I was sharing about consequences and punishment and attaching those to behavior. So you're saying that you put him at a distance, put him in a sit, or you put him in a down, and then people come in and he gets wild and crazy, and and I think you said that if they settle and then get back up, then he gets wild and crazy again. You need to have your dog, in my opinion, if you sent your dog here, we would do full e-collar training program with your dog. We would teach your dog all about sit down, place, recall, all the obedience stuff that I just told you about. And which would start getting the dog into a listening, respectful, more polite mode in an overall general sense. But then we would set up door stuff, and we would start going after that. We would proof all the commands, as if you're going to do good obedience, you have to proof all of them. So place doesn't mean place and then wander off, or down doesn't mean down and then wander off. It means keep your rear there until I say otherwise. So, but when you get into the kind of behavior mod, some people could say, well, that's still training. But what we're really talking about is now we're moving out of just proofing that behavior. Now we're starting to look for direct triggers. And direct triggers for you guys are people coming into the home. And that is what's causing your GSD to lose his marbles, because his territorial stuff's coming out. So I would go through a full e-collar program. You can use our free videos if Laura can link that up, at www.thegooddog.net. Tons of free videos, e-collar and prong stuff, but I wouldn't do prong, I would do e-collar with this. And I would back tie your shepherd once he knows place, once he understands the e-collar, once he's fully conditioned. And the moment I would set all the stuff, it's always dog trainers set stuff up so they get the drop on the dog. I almost said homeowners, actual dog owners typically just react to whatever the situation delivers, and so they're behind the 8 ball. They're behind, the dog's ahead of them emotionally. The dog sees what's going on and reacts. The owner's then trying to react, but they're a couple steps behind. Much better for any kind of behavior mod stuff if you're the one that's setting it up, it's your design, and you're ready, your dog's in place, been conditioned, been trained, knows, been proofed, can't leave it unless, and will be corrected for leaving it, but is back tied just to make sure everybody's safe with a loose leash, loose enough to where the dog can make the mistake but can't get to the door. And then you proof it. You have whoever likes to come over, a brave friend that happens to maybe get your dog's goat, get him a little worked up. And the moment that you see your shepherd go from this to like that, that's when you correct. You don't wait till the person comes in. You don't go, is he going to be okay this time? Or maybe he'll settle, or maybe some magic will transpire. No, you've got a reactive dog that's reacting to humans in a negative fashion. You need to inhibit that choice at the beginning as soon as it starts if you want a shot at actually changing it. So, set it up, condition your dog to the e-collar, back tie your dog on place, your dog already knows the command, knock, 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 friend, you go to the door, you look behind you, your dog's already like this, pop with a no, right? So simultaneous no and a correction at a high level, right? But you're like, I haven't even opened the door yet. How can I correct the dog? He's just alert. Exactly. That's 1, 2, or 3 of getting to 10, which is explosion, where it's the point of no return. That is your window. Your window is like 1 to 3. When you get to 4, 5, 6, 7, usually your goose is cooked, or you have to use excruciatingly high levels, which still may not give you what you're looking for. So you have this teeny window, teeny moment in time. And what most owners struggle with is correcting at that split second because it doesn't look like much. They see it and it looks benign and they go, oh, he's just that. Or he's just going, that's it. That's your moment. Your dog just said, someone's at the door. I don't like that. That's when you correct. And I would correct at a firm level, and I would keep working on it until I find the level that your dog, like here's an important piece of this, right? That goes beyond just the obedience stuff. You need a state change. You don't just want your dog to go, correction, correction. That you're underwhelming your dog. You're nagging your dog, and it's just going to keep going and going and going. If your dog looks back again, roll up. No, don't yell, don't scream, don't get wild and woolly. Just calm. No. Dog can't move. He's back tied. He can't close the distance. So you got nothing to sweat, nothing to worry about. And if he keeps looking back like a really, really determined, persistent shepherd, cool. Roll up. No. You'll find a level where your dog will go, or the ears will go back, or he'll just look away. Great, look away, avoid. All the stuff that people are like, avoidance is like terrible. No, avoidance is great. You can work on existence and eventually liking someone down the line. First, don't do that. First, avoid. First, I don't want any of that. That's where you start. So I hope that, my goodness, man, he's busting through the doors. Anyways, so that's how I would approach it. Obedience commands in and of themselves will not stop that behavior. It will not create an aversive event that is powerful enough to override that DNA of who the hell are you and why are you here? Just telling you. And then I look at everything else in your relationship. How much affection, how much freedom, how much roaming does he have in the house? Does he have furniture privileges? Does he have bed privileges? How much affection is going down? How much playtime is going down? How much ass kicking and working his butt off is going down conversely? So all of those things feed into it. So how's that? Hopefully that helps. But you got to correct it. If you don't correct it, we've got 3 shepherds here right now. They almost all have the same issues. They almost all have the same, like, suspicious, unsure, slightly insecure kind of thing. And they all have to go through the process of obedience work being proofed, but then also making sure, don't you dare think about going after anybody because there's a heavy consequence for it. I hope that helps. Hope it's clear. And you can always hit us back with a little question, a little comment on the show. I know you submitted this like Barb did and like Tara did, and Terry and Victoria, all for the questions for me to answer, but we figured why not answer them here on the great Q&A Saturday show. Anyways, hope that helps.
Okay, this one's for me. Question number 4 comes from Terry. Terry says, there's slow progress when dealing with extremely anxious and nervous dogs. Building balance in a calm state of mind seems to take so long. It's frustrating, sometimes not knowing if you're making progress or not. Any suggestions on getting there quicker? Okay, Terry, this is a great question. This is a really tough one, especially from a trainer perspective, because you do want to move slow, but you also want to ride that line and make sure that you're moving the dog through the stuff that they need to be moved through. Because sometimes you'll hear people like, oh, I've spent 3 years, building trust with my dog, trust exercises, and all you're really doing is keeping the dog stuck because they're an anxious, nervous mess, and sometimes they just need to get that little push out of the nest, if you will. So not that's a really blanket statement, because I can't tell you, one dog might be totally different than the other, but definitely riding that line is an art form. And I would say I learned so much, just watching Sean work with those dogs, watching trainers like Jeff Gelman work with dogs like that, anxious, nervous dogs, that you have to respect their boundaries and respect their nervousness and how they need to move slow, but also give them a little nudge when they need it, or else really they will just stay stuck. I'll never forget, we had this dog we called the frozen dog, Bert. Bert was actually frozen, like he would just sit there and no one could move him and he wouldn't move, and he would just sit there all day like totally frozen. And of course, where he was rescued, he was, everyone felt sorry for him and we felt sorry for him and all this. And we started working with Bert, and what we did with every dog, and I'll tie the story into the answer really, is we just start putting them through the program. So the program is, right, like, prong collar, leash work, slow, moving through the process, making sure they know it fairly before moving to any corrections, taking our time with everything, watching the dog, making sure the dog is like tuned in and actually learning and all that stuff, and on a good learning curve, so that they're actually can process and they're thinking, even if they're nervous about you, even if they're concerned about, sounds or smells or the mat, they don't want to go on the mat or this, we still have to guide them and make sure we're teaching them and just watch them. And then move them through the process to e-collar. And e-collars, what we find, is really the most important element for any nervous, anxious dog, which is really kind of for a lot of people that don't know e-collar work, would be like, oh, you're hurting the dog, that's anxious and nervous. No, you're not hurting it. You're doing it's really a neutral conversation for a dog who is afraid of anything that's not neutral, right? So dogs that are anxious and nervous most likely are concerned about a lot of, eye contact or physical pressure, or even physical pressure from a prong or anything like that. But an e-collar, you can use it on such a low level and it's just neutral pressure. It's like, no, that over there doesn't feel, that over there is more uncomfortable. Coming close to me, which a lot of them, have weird stuff about people, coming close to me is actually more comfortable. You don't feel this sensation. And so it's very black and white, and it helps dogs that have any nervousness. And so taking them through the program is really what's it. And how fast you move them through the program is going to vary dog to dog, of course. So you're going to want to take your time with dogs that need it. Now, in the case with like Bert, we moved slow with him for a few days, but then we realized that he was actually capable of more than what he was given credit for. So a lot of people just thought he was just this frozen guy who couldn't do anything, but we were seeing him actually learn and actually make choices of like, you know what, no one asks anything of me if I just sit here frozen. So we knew he was staying stuck, so we had to push him a little bit. We had to push him and say like, okay, this time you actually have to move. We're gonna actually go for a walk, no big deal, just gonna take a walk, and you have to put one foot in front of the other. And what happened with Bert is we found out that he was kind of bratty about it. He was like, I don't wanna go on a walk, I don't wanna do this. But guess what? After, I think it was like a day of telling him, come on, let's go on a walk. Not like forcing him, but being like, let's go, as Jeff Gelman would say, and kind of moving him through that space. Like I said, pushing him out of the nest, that little nudge. Bert was like, okay. And Bert was like, walking with every big packs of dogs and hanging out with dogs and not frozen anymore. And he just really needed that little push, and he had spent years just like stuck in his own mind. So it's a really tough one to answer without like knowing the specific dog. And I know you're talking about kind of like in general, but what I would say more than anything is you want to stick with the program, definitely move to low-level e-collar training, take your time, but also really watch the dog and work with lots of dogs so you can know the patterns and you can know like, I think they're capable of more. I think I can push them out the nest a little bit. I hope that helps. Okay.
So thanks, Laura, and let's jump into the next one.
Okay, final question, number 5, is from Victoria. Victoria says, the latest I have heard from a positive reinforcement trainer is that the trend in our area is to drug a dog if their methods don't work. Personally, I think that it's a form of animal abuse. I would like to hear your thoughts on it. All right.
Okay, so thanks, Laura. So we've got Victoria here, and Victoria's got a fantastic question. And this question, this is a loaded one. This one gets a lot of feathers ruffled. This one. So, pure positive folks recommending drugs when their approach methods, training methodology, training tools, whatever, their blueprint doesn't work. That sounds like it would be kind of wild and woolly, but it is so the norm. It's what we hear constantly. Like if you go to a veterinary behaviorist, from my understanding, from my small experience, from what I've heard, what's been shared with me from other trainers, is that they rarely, if ever, actually touch or work with your dog. There's not like hands-on training. It's really like going to the psychiatrist and getting, prepped for medication. So that's one side of it. So that's the kind of side that just totally buys into medication as being the panacea or the best answer for dogs. Because why? Because they're not willing to utilize any tools or approaches that are aversive that would actually change behavior. So if you can't change behavior through positive only methods, then what are you left to do but blame the dog and just say the dog's too serious and you've got to use meds. So with pure positive trainers, which aren't veterinary behaviorists, just positive only trainers, they recommend all the time for owners, like I can't tell you how many dogs have arrived here that are on all sorts of medication. And it's because the past trainer or trainers have recommended that your dog can't be helped with this, and this, so you need to get him on Clomicalm or some kind of doggy Prozac or something like that to chill him out and relax him. It's a perfect out for a methodology and a training approach that doesn't work for most dogs. For definitely for any dogs with any kind of serious stuff, right? For really, really mild dogs, like, yeah, you can get some good stuff with it. But for most dogs that have any kind of real stuff, pure positive stuff is not going to get you, pure positive stuff, charming, right? Bell, knock it off. Pure positive stuff is not going to be able to inhibit heavy-duty dog reactivity. Pure positive training is not going to be able to inhibit human aggression. Pure positive training is not going to be able to inhibit major dog aggression or resource guarding, or even oftentimes simple stuff like pulling on the leash, jumping up on people, counter surfing, stuff like that. Dogs get put on medication for the simplest, most benign, ridiculous stuff. We see it all the time. Dogs that are cupcakes. Now, that said, are there dogs that should be on medication? I believe there are. So, but here's the caveat. Here's how this works. So for me, any dog that comes in here has to be off medication. We want to work with the dog au naturel. We want to see who the real dog is. We don't want anything obscured. We want to work with the dog, whoever that dog is. After that dog has had a high level of high quality training, whether it's us or somebody else who really knows what they're doing, and the dog is still uncomfortable in their own skin, that's a different story. Like, I'm not in this weird ego space where it's like either the training works or your dog is like, no. If we've done our very best work training wise and your dog is predisposed to being highly anxious, highly nervous, and is like really freaked out all the time, I would much rather your dog, if there is a medication that works for your dog that takes the edge off and allows your dog to be a little more comfortable in its own skin post-training, I'm totally good for that. I'm totally okay for that, or totally okay with that. So it's not like it's one way or the other. It's not like it's not like we're anti-medication. What we are is we're anti-medication in the absence of high quality training and using it as the first line of defense. It's the first line of defense for a freaking training method that doesn't serve or work for 99% of dogs. So if that's the case, and you're selling it, and you're making money, and you're seeing clients, you sure as heck better have some answer when it doesn't work, right? So either you blame the owners, you haven't done the protocols right, you haven't spent enough time, you're not dedicated enough, you haven't got them hungry enough, you're not using high quality or high value enough food, or you need to get the dog on medication because the dog's a Looney Tune. It's the blame game. That's what you got, Victoria. You got the blame game. So the blame game is anything we can do to sidestep responsibility for not being able to actually serve you or your dog, and we're okay with that. Integrity-wise, we're okay with that. Like, it boggles my mind. It boggles my mind that people that are supposed to care about dogs and owners would hold an ideology of no discomfort, no aversives, no consequences, because dogs are the only creatures in the world that should never ever have to deal with or cope with that. We're going to avoid all that, even if it means that they're left in the lurch, stuck in cycles of behavior, of anxiety, of stress, of freaking out, of fear. We're going to leave them there, but we'll throw some meds at them. Right? We'll throw some meds at them, maybe a Kong toy or a puzzle, food puzzle or something like that. But we won't do anything that will actually really help them, because that goes against our ideology. Because anything that's uncomfortable for a dog, we can't allow that. So even though being mentally uncomfortable, being highly anxious and freaked out, being stressed constantly is the worst freaking sentence you can ever sentence a dog to, right? I mean, any of us who struggle with anything like that know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what it's like if you're having the worst day, you're highly stressed, you're highly anxious, everything's coming down on you. Imagine that's your reality, like day in and day out, and you're a dog and you have no way to get out of it. You don't know how to even like tune out. You don't know how to relax. And it's your owner's job to do that. It's the owner's job to be able to show the dog how to have an off switch, how to turn off, how to relax, how to calm down, how to clock out, how to not do that, how to not load up at the other dog, how to not load up at that human coming in the door. It's your responsibility. And if your trainer won't do it, then ditch that trainer. Make sure before you put your dog on medication, make sure that you've got a badass trainer that has real experience, real results, and proof of all of that, and have them do their best work, and then see what you got. Then, if that trainer says, we really did everything we can, and your dog's still struggling, and I can tell your dog's really uncomfortable, like the last thing I want to see is a dog that's just uncomfortable. It's the worst thing in the world. So, train first with high quality training, then add meds if you need to. Most of the time, 99% of the time, we tell them to ditch the meds. We don't need them. Even for obsessive stuff, chasing tails, self-mutilation, licking, things like that, we see 99% of that stuff go away, right? Even digestive problems, physiological problems, things like that, we see that stuff go away. Why? Because the nervous system is on constant edge, and if you can actually reduce that and calm it down and relax it and chill the dog out, you give the dog's immune system the ability to fight off all these things and right the dog and get the dog into a better space physiologically, and the nervous system gets to calm down, and so the dog gets to get into a better place psychologically. There are a couple exceptions, and I know a few of you are going to write in. I've heard from you guys before, and I don't disagree with you. There are some folks, just like there are some humans out there that need medication in order to even do therapy, right? Because their brains are so far, just like so noisy and so frantic and so overwhelmed that they need medication in order to calm down enough to be able to get true value out of a therapy session. So if you have one of those dogs that is absolutely out of its tree, unable to focus, and I don't mean just your kind of amped up dog, because a lot of them are amped up and people say, oh, you can't focus. I'm talking about true blue dog stuff that needs medication in order to help the dog calm down and relax so the dog can actually focus on training. There are a few exceptions with that, so I'm not negating that. I'm just saying that you guys are so the teeny exception to the rule. The big unfortunate thing, the elephant in the room, is that what's become commonly accepted as quality dog training, science freaking based dog training, is dog training that leaves dogs and owners stuck because they won't use the tools, and they won't use the strategies, and they won't use common sense, and they won't use what life uses to teach all of us how to do better, how to make better choices, what's good, what's bad, what's allowed and what's not allowed. They won't do that stuff. So what do they have to do? They've got to find a myriad of other ways to try and obfuscate what is not really going down. I think I used obfuscate right. Anyways, I'm done with my rant, guys. I hope that makes sense. Medication isn't a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if it's a first line of defense because your training and your trainer sucks. Anyways, Sean from The Good Dog, Laura Morgan, thank you so much for everything. And point to her like she's here, but she's not here. She's back at her place. Thanks so much for watching. Any questions about this, feel free to hit us up, and we will see you guys next week.
Okay, guys, thanks so much. The baby slept through the whole thing, so we're blessed today. Thanks for watching.